She thought I was just some nerd. After she left me for a bartender, I bought the bar, fired him, and hired his ex. I never thought my life would become one of those stories you read about online, but here we are. 3 months ago, I was living what I thought was a pretty decent life with my girlfriend of 2 years. We had our little apartment downtown, our weekend routines, and I genuinely believed we were happy together. Sure, I spent long hours working on my app, debugging code until my eyes burned, but I was building something that would give us a future. Turns out, she saw it differently. One Tuesday evening, as I was troubleshooting a particularly nasty server issue, she came home from her marketing job looking different. There was this energy about her, this excitement that I hadn't seen in months. She kept checking her phone and smiling at the screen in a way that made my stomach twist, even though I couldn't put my finger on why. The next few days were weird. She started going out more, claiming she needed to network for work or meet up with college friends I'd never heard her mention before. She'd come home smelling like cigarettes and craft beer, which was strange because she usually stuck to wine. When I asked about it, she'd just shrug and say she was trying new places around the city. I should have seen it coming, honestly. The signs were all there, painted in neon colors that I was apparently too blind to notice. She started criticizing everything about our life together. The way I organized my desk was too rigid. The restaurants I picked were too predictable. Even the way I folded laundry became a source of irritation for her. She called me boring, said I never did anything spontaneous or exciting. The worst part was how she'd compare me to other guys she'd meet at bars or networking events. There was always some story about how this guy was so funny, or that guy had such interesting hobbies. She'd tell me about this one bartender who made the most amazing cocktails and had traveled all over Europe. He was apparently everything I wasn't: adventurous, charismatic, the life of the party. 2 weeks into this strange new phase of our relationship, she didn't come home at all. I stayed up until 3 in the morning, calling and texting, imagining car accidents and hospital visits. When she finally walked through the door the next afternoon, her hair was a mess and she was wearing the same clothes from the day before. She looked at me like I was the one who had done something wrong. That's when she told me about him. The bartender. How he made her feel alive again. How being with him was like breathing fresh air after being trapped in a stuffy room. She packed her bags that same day, taking her favorite mug, the throw pillows she'd insisted we needed, and the little succulent plant she'd bought for the kitchen windowsill. She left behind the framed photo of us from last Christmas and the spare key on the counter. I spent the first week in a complete haze. I called in sick to work, ordered way too much takeout, and binge-watched every show I could find that didn't remind me of her. My apartment felt enormous and tiny at the same time. Every corner held some memory. Every room echoed with conversations we'd had or fights we'd shared. I found myself checking my phone constantly, hoping she'd text to say she'd made a mistake. The second week was worse. That's when the social media torture began. She didn't block me, which felt crueler than if she had. Instead, I got to watch her new life unfold in real time through carefully curated posts. Pictures of fancy cocktails with little umbrellas. Photos of her laughing at some outdoor festival, his arm around her waist. Stories of late-night adventures and spontaneous road trips to places we'd talked about visiting together. I learned more about this guy than I ever wanted to know. His name was on every post, tagged in every location. He worked at this trendy little bar downtown, the kind of place with exposed brick walls and craft cocktails that cost $20 each. The type of establishment that attracted young professionals who wanted to feel edgy and artistic while still being able to expense their drinks to their corporate jobs. By the third week, something shifted inside me. I was sitting in my home office, staring at the same 3 lines of code I'd been unable to fix for days, when my phone rang. It was my business partner calling about the acquisition offer we'd been negotiating for months. The company wanted to buy our app, and they were offering more money than I'd ever imagined seeing in my lifetime. The irony wasn't lost on me. While my personal life was falling apart, my professional world was about to explode in the best possible way. All those late nights, all those hours she complained about me spending hunched over my computer, all that boring, predictable work she'd mocked, it had actually been worth something. A lot of something. I signed the papers 2 days later. The money hit my account the following week, and suddenly I had more financial freedom than I knew what to do with. My first instinct was to call her, to share the news with the person who'd been beside me through most of the journey. Then I remembered she was probably mixing drinks with her new boyfriend, living her exciting, unpredictable life. That's when the idea started forming. It was petty, I knew that. It was probably stupid and definitely vindictive. But it was also the first thing that had made me feel genuinely excited in weeks. I started researching the bar where he worked, digging into its business records and financial history. Public information is amazing when you know where to look, and my tech background had taught me exactly that. The place was struggling, really struggling. The kind of struggling where they were behind on rent, barely making payroll, and probably one bad month away from closing permanently. The owner was some guy who'd inherited it from his uncle and clearly had no idea how to run a business. The reviews were mediocre at best, complaints about slow service and overpriced drinks that didn't live up to the hype. I spent a weekend driving around the neighborhood, observing the foot traffic, noting the competition, analyzing the location from every angle I could think of. It was actually a great spot, right in the heart of the entertainment district, surrounded by restaurants and theaters that brought in crowds every night. The building itself had good bones, high ceilings, and large windows that could showcase the interior to passing pedestrians. The more I researched, the more convinced I became that this wasn't just about revenge. This was actually a solid business opportunity. With the right management, better inventory, and some marketing that didn't rely solely on word of mouth, the place could be genuinely successful. I could turn it into something worth owning, regardless of my personal motivations. Making the offer was surprisingly easy. I set up an LLC, had my lawyer handle the negotiations, and within 2 weeks, I owned a bar. The previous owner was so relieved to get out from under the debt that he barely questioned the quick sale. I requested that the transition be kept quiet until I was ready to announce the change in ownership, which he was happy to agree to in exchange for a smooth closing. The hardest part was waiting. I wanted to walk in immediately and start making changes, but I knew timing was everything. I needed to observe the current operations, understand the staff dynamics, and figure out exactly how I wanted to handle the situation. So I became a customer. Update 1. I started going to the bar regularly, always sitting in different spots, always paying cash, never staying long enough to draw attention. It was surreal watching him work, seeing the guy who'd stolen my girlfriend pour drinks and charm customers like nothing had happened. He was good at his job, I had to admit. He had that easy confidence that made people want to be around him, the kind of natural charisma that I'd always envied in others. She came in a few times while I was there, though she never noticed me. I'd picked my seats carefully, always in the darker corners where the lighting was poor. Watching them together was like looking at an alternate version of my life, one where I was the kind of person who could make her laugh that loud, who could make her eyes light up like that. During these observation sessions, I started noticing things about the bar's operations that explained why it was failing. The inventory was a mess, with expensive liquor sitting unopened while cheaper alternatives ran out constantly. The staff scheduling was inefficient, leaving them understaffed during busy periods and overstaffed during slow times. The menu hadn't been updated in years, still featuring cocktails that were trendy 5 years ago but felt dated now. More importantly, I started learning about the interpersonal drama that was affecting the business. There was tension between him and another bartender, a woman who clearly knew what she was doing but was constantly being overshadowed by his showmanship. I overheard enough conversations to piece together that they had history, the kind of messy romantic history that makes working together complicated. She was professional about it, never letting the personal stuff interfere with her work, but I could see the frustration in her eyes when he'd take credit for ideas she'd suggested or when customers would request him specifically for drinks she created. Her name was on the schedule more often than his. She handled the difficult customers with more grace, and she actually seemed to care about the quality of the drinks she was making. One evening, I was sitting at the far end of the bar when a group of customers sent back a round of cocktails, complaining they were too sweet and poorly balanced. He tried to argue with them, insisting the drinks were made correctly, getting defensive in a way that made the situation worse. She stepped in smoothly, apologized for the mistake, and remade the entire order without charging them extra. The customers left happy, and she handled the whole situation like it was routine. That's when I realized my revenge plan could be so much better than I'd originally imagined. It wasn't just about firing him and making a point. It was about recognizing talent that was being wasted and building something actually worth running. She was the real asset in this place, not him. I started researching her background and discovered she'd been working in hospitality for years, had managed other bars before this one, and had actually applied for the assistant manager position here but was passed over. The reason? The owner's nephew had recommended his friend for the role instead. That friend turned out to be him, despite having less experience and fewer qualifications. The more I learned, the angrier I became on her behalf. This wasn't just about my personal situation anymore. It was about watching someone genuinely talented get overlooked while someone else coasted on charm and connections. It was about seeing a business fail because the people in charge couldn't recognize what was right in front of them. I decided to approach her before making my big reveal. I needed to know if she'd be interested in actually running the place properly, not just working there. So I started timing my visits for when she was working alone, striking up casual conversations about the bar industry, asking for her recommendations on drinks. She was incredible to talk to. Smart, passionate about her work, full of ideas for how the place could be improved. She told me about cocktail trends that were emerging, about ways to streamline operations, about marketing strategies that could bring in new customers without alienating the regulars. Everything she suggested made perfect business sense. When I asked her what she'd change about the bar if she could, her eyes lit up like she'd been waiting years for someone to ask that question. She had a whole vision for updating the menu, reorganizing the layout to improve flow, implementing systems to track inventory more efficiently. She even had ideas for themed nights and special events that could bring in crowds during traditionally slow periods. The night before I planned to reveal myself as the new owner, I went in one last time as a customer. He was working, and so was she. My ex-girlfriend was there too, sitting at the bar nursing a glass of wine and watching him work with that same adoring expression I used to love seeing directed at me. He was in full performance mode, juggling bottles and telling stories to a group of customers who were eating up every word. Meanwhile, she was handling the actual work, taking orders, making drinks, running the register, while he basked in the attention. It was like watching a magic show where everyone was focused on the flashy assistant while the real magician worked behind the scenes. That's when I noticed something that made my blood boil. A customer had complained about their drink being wrong, and instead of taking responsibility, he threw her under the bus. He told them she must have mixed up the order, that he'd have to remake it himself to make sure it was done right. She didn't defend herself, just quietly started preparing the replacement drink while he continued his performance. I paid my tab, left without saying anything, and went home to prepare for the next day. Tomorrow, everything would change. Update 2. The day I walked into that bar as the owner was probably the most nervous I'd ever been in my life. I'd practiced what I was going to say, rehearsed different scenarios in my head, but nothing really prepares you for a moment like that. I chose a Friday evening, right during the dinner rush when I knew both of them would be working and the place would be crowded with witnesses. I walked in wearing my best suit, the one I'd bought for the acquisition meeting, carrying a folder full of official documents. The bar was packed, exactly as I'd hoped. Happy hour crowd mixed with early dinner customers, the kind of busy atmosphere where news travels fast and everyone pays attention to drama. I walked up to the bar and waited for him to notice me. When he did, his face went through about 5 different expressions in the span of 2 seconds. Confusion, recognition, concern, and then a kind of cocky amusement like he was about to enjoy whatever confrontation he thought was coming. Before he could say anything, I introduced myself to the room as the new owner. The noise level dropped immediately as people turned to stare. I could see her in my peripheral vision, frozen in place with a cocktail shaker in her hands, trying to process what she was hearing. Then I spotted my ex-girlfriend. She was sitting at her usual spot at the end of the bar, and the look on her face was everything I'd hoped it would be. Complete shock, mixed with something that looked almost like fear. The boring, predictable guy she'd left behind was suddenly standing in her favorite bar, announcing that he owned the place. I kept my voice calm and professional as I addressed the staff. I explained that there would be some immediate changes in management and that I'd be conducting individual meetings with everyone over the next few days to discuss their roles going forward. The crowd was eating it up. You could practically feel the excitement in the room as people realized they were witnessing some serious drama. Then I turned to him specifically. I thanked him for his service and informed him that his employment was terminated, effective immediately. I asked him to collect his personal belongings and leave the premises. The room went completely silent except for the background music that was still playing from the speakers. He tried to argue, of course. Started making noise about wrongful termination and how he was the best bartender they had. I let him talk for about 30 seconds before I pulled out his employment file and started reading from it. 3 customer complaints in the past month. 2 instances of showing up late without calling. 1 formal warning about inappropriate workplace behavior. Everything was documented, everything was legal, and everything was final. Security wasn't necessary. He was smart enough to realize he was beaten. He grabbed his jacket from behind the bar and walked out, but not before shooting a look at my ex-girlfriend that made it clear their relationship was about to get very complicated. She followed him out about 5 minutes later, leaving her wine glass half full on the bar. I watched through the front window as they had what looked like a very heated conversation on the sidewalk. She kept gesturing back toward the bar, and he kept shaking his head. Eventually, she got in her car and drove away while he walked off in the opposite direction. But the real moment I'd been waiting for came when I turned to address the woman who'd been watching all of this unfold from behind the bar. I offered her the position of bar manager on the spot, with a significant raise and full authority over hiring, scheduling, and menu development. The relief and excitement on her face made the entire plan worth it. She accepted immediately, and we spent the next hour talking through her ideas for improving operations. Everything she suggested was practical, cost-effective, and designed to improve both customer experience and staff morale. She already had relationships with better suppliers, ideas for staff training programs, and a vision for marketing that would attract new customers without alienating the regulars. The changes started immediately. We updated the cocktail menu with drinks that actually reflected current trends. We implemented a proper inventory system that prevented waste and ensured popular items never ran out. We adjusted the staffing schedule to match actual customer patterns instead of just guessing. Within 2 weeks, the difference was obvious. Customer complaints dropped to almost zero. Online reviews started improving as word spread about the better service and higher quality drinks. The staff was happier because they were working in a more organized environment with clear expectations and fair compensation. But the most satisfying change was watching the bar transform from a place that was just scraping by into somewhere people actually wanted to spend time. The atmosphere improved when the interpersonal drama disappeared. Customers started coming back more frequently, and new faces started showing up based on recommendations from friends. The financial turnaround was even faster than I'd expected. Within a month, we were operating in the black for the first time in years. Revenue was up 30% from the same period the previous year, and customer satisfaction scores were the highest they'd ever been. 3 months later, my ex-girlfriend came back. I was in the office going over inventory reports when the new manager knocked on my door to tell me someone wanted to speak with me. I knew it was her before I even looked up from the paperwork. She looked different. Tired, maybe a little thinner, definitely less confident than the last time I'd seen her. She asked if we could talk privately, and I agreed, curious about what she possibly had to say. What followed was the most awkward conversation of my life. She told me things hadn't worked out with him after he lost his job. Apparently, his charm was less appealing when he was unemployed and bitter about being fired. She said she'd realized she'd made a mistake, that she missed what we'd had together, that she wanted to try again. I listened to everything she had to say without interrupting. When she finished, I told her I appreciated her honesty, but I wasn't interested in revisiting our relationship. I explained that I'd moved on, that I was focused on building something new, and that I didn't think we were compatible anymore. She tried to argue, to convince me that we could make it work if we both tried harder. She pointed out that I was different now, more confident and successful, and that maybe that would change the dynamic between us. She even suggested that my owning the bar proved I could be spontaneous and exciting when I wanted to be. That's when I realized the most important thing about this whole situation. The revenge had been satisfying, sure, but it wasn't what had really changed my life. Building something new, recognizing talent, creating a successful business, that's what had made me feel confident and accomplished. The bar was thriving not because I'd gotten back at someone who'd hurt me, but because I'd made smart decisions and surrounded myself with people who were good at their jobs. I told her I hoped she found what she was looking for, but that it wasn't going to be with me. She left without arguing further, and I went back to my inventory reports. Final update. It's been almost a year since I bought the bar, and I honestly barely think about the revenge aspect anymore. What started as a petty plan to get back at someone who'd hurt me turned into the most rewarding business venture I've ever been involved in. The bar is now one of the most popular spots in the district. We've won 3 local awards for best cocktails, and we're booked solid for private events 2 months out. The manager I promoted has become not just an excellent business partner, but a genuine friend. She's everything a business partner should be: smart, dedicated, creative, and completely focused on making the place successful. We've expanded the menu to include small plates that pair perfectly with our cocktail offerings. We host themed nights that draw different crowds throughout the week. We've implemented a loyalty program that keeps customers coming back regularly. Most importantly, we've created a workplace culture where everyone feels valued and respected. The financial success has been incredible, but honestly, that's not what makes me proudest. What makes me proudest is walking into the bar on any given night and seeing a room full of people having a genuinely good time. Seeing staff members who love coming to work because they're treated fairly and given opportunities to grow. Seeing a business that was failing transform into something that contributes positively to the community. The other day, I was going through old photos on my phone and came across some pictures from my relationship with my ex. Looking at them now, I can see things I couldn't see at the time. We weren't actually happy together. We were just comfortable. She was right about one thing. I was predictable. But being predictable isn't the same as being boring, and being spontaneous isn't the same as being exciting. Real excitement comes from building something meaningful, from taking risks that matter, from surrounding yourself with people who challenge you to be better. It comes from recognizing opportunities and having the courage to act on them, even when the outcome isn't guaranteed. I ran into him a few months ago at a coffee shop across town. He was working there as a barista, and he looked like he was doing okay. We made eye contact, and for a second, I thought he might come over to talk, but he just nodded and went back to making drinks. I realized I didn't feel angry anymore. I didn't feel vindicated or superior. I just felt indifferent. The bar continues to grow and evolve. We're looking at opening a second location next year, and we're considering franchising opportunities for other cities. What started as a way to hurt someone who'd hurt me has become the foundation for something much bigger than I ever imagined. I still work in tech, but now I do it because I love solving problems, not because I'm trying to prove something to someone else. The app money gave me the freedom to take risks, and the bar taught me that the best revenge isn't hurting someone who wronged you. It's building something so successful that their opinion of you becomes completely irrelevant. My personal life has improved too. I'm dating someone new, someone who appreciates ambition and hard work instead of seeing them as character flaws. She's a regular customer who started coming in for our Tuesday wine tastings and ended up staying for conversation. She thinks the bar's origin story is hilarious, but she's more interested in talking about our future plans than rehashing past drama. The success of the bar has given me confidence I never had before, but it's a different kind of confidence than I expected. It's not about proving I'm better than someone else or getting revenge on people who've wronged me. It's about knowing I can identify opportunities, make smart decisions, and build something valuable from scratch. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if my ex had never left me for that bartender. Would I have ever taken the risk of buying a business? Would I have ever discovered that I actually enjoy the hospitality industry? Would I have ever learned that some of my best qualities, attention to detail, systematic thinking, long-term planning, are exactly what makes someone successful in unexpected fields? Probably not. I'd probably still be in that comfortable, predictable relationship, working my tech job and never pushing myself to try anything new. In a weird way, her leaving me was the best thing that ever happened to me, even though it didn't feel that way at the time. The bar closes at 2 a.m. on weekends, and I often stay late to help with cleanup and to plan for the next day. There's something peaceful about the quiet after a busy night, about seeing the evidence of success in empty glasses and full tip jars. It's during those quiet moments that I feel most grateful for how everything turned out. I never set out to become a bar owner, but now I can't imagine doing anything else. The combination of business strategy, customer service, staff management, and creative problem-solving keeps me engaged in a way that pure tech work never did. Every night brings new challenges and new opportunities to improve. The best part is knowing that everyone who works here is genuinely happy to be part of what we've built together. The staff turnover rate is practically zero because people love working in an environment where their contributions are recognized and rewarded. The manager and I have created something that makes everyone's life better, not just our own. Looking back, I realized that buying the bar wasn't really about revenge at all. It was about refusing to let someone else's opinion of me define what I was capable of achieving. It was about taking a situation that felt like complete failure and turning it into the foundation for something better than I ever imagined possible. So to anyone reading this who's going through something similar, someone who feels like they've been dismissed or underestimated or left behind, remember that other people's limitations on you aren't real unless you accept them. The most boring, predictable person in someone else's story can be the hero of their own story if they're willing to take risks and work hard to build something meaningful. And sometimes the best revenge is simply becoming so successful that the person who hurt you becomes completely irrelevant to your happiness.